Yeah, thanks for having me here. And it's actually kind of like a great handover from TravelPerk because we are also kind of like in the business travel segment. So what is Homelike? Homelike is a leading marketplace for furnished apartments in the long-term industry. And when we talk about long-term, we talk about plus 30 nights. So it's a monthly rental platform. In a similar way as kind of like TravelPerk is trying to disrupt how we do actually bookings on a travel management company perspective, we actually see a lot of challenges in the long-term housing market, which can be kind of like divided into four major challenges we do see. One thing is, when it comes to business travel for long-term, it's a pretty offline-driven process. And we work with 15,000 corporate clients across the globe, and sometimes it takes actually up to 15 manual touch points for them to book a furnished apartment. I come back to that in a second. A second major issue we see in long-term travel space is that the market is super fragmented. So when you talk about long-term travel, you mainly talk about service apartment, boarding houses, but also like 70% of our supply comes from the real estate industry, which is by nature a very fragmented market. So you have a lot of local, smaller players you need to be integrating to. So this doesn't give any transparency for the demand side. A third one is, and that's more tailored to the issues and the challenges you see in the prop tech sector, that's offline property management. And that's a gigantic thing. I could easily think about companies who can only focus on this challenge. You need to think about that a lot of those real estate suppliers do manage their portfolio by pen and paper or Excel spreadsheets. So Excel spreadsheets, they're actually solutions how you can integrate it into their supply, but when they use pen and paper, even with the best API on this planet, you can't actually fetch the data and kind of like pull it into your platform. And the fourth one is, when you want to accommodate employees or business travelers for longer than 30 nights, the hotel is actually no alternative because the existing platforms out there, referring towards Booking.com or HRS, which are pretty dominant in this market, this is actually blocked by the system. So it's a very high price corporates need to spend when they want to accommodate long-term business travelers in hotels. From a market size perspective, and this is actually something which is growing on a 20% year-over-year growth rate, 25% of all business travel trips are longer than 30 nights, which is actually astonishing, because when you take a look at what's happening in the tech industry on the business travel side, most of the companies actually targeting 1 to 14 nights. So the Airbnb, Booking.coms, HRS, HomeAways on this planet, they build tremendous technology to actually solve the problem of short stay trips. But there's a 25% market there who actually suffer a lot from no technology and no proper booking system, how they can actually find their entire apartments when they travel for a longer trip. So we are talking about a $160 billion market. It's growing, as I said, 20% on the supply side and about 15% on the demand side. So what do we do at Homelike? So the closest you can actually pitch Homelike is that we are a prop tech company at the edge of business travel. So on the left-hand side, when we talk about the supply side, we do work mainly with larger suppliers, which have an average portfolio size of 30 units. We do have some suppliers who have a couple of thousands, and we do have some suppliers who have only 3 or 4 apartments. But we mainly focus on professional suppliers, which do have entire apartments and no rooms. On the demand side, and that's kind of like also what TravelPerk mentioned in the previous presentation, business travel, you need to spend a lot of money on infrastructure, technology, product features, so on and so forth. And till today, those corporates don't have access to the supply we are offering on the supplier side. So we build actually connectivity and API integrations in order to make the demand side accessible to the supply. In terms of product, so basically you can say we are building 2 companies or 2 different products under the radar of one umbrella company, which is Homelike. So we do work a lot on the supplier side, providing them with property management software, but also pricing tools and using a lot of data in order to provide them information on how they can find the best prices on a monthly basis. And from a corporate side perspective, there are topics like travel management policies, for example. So when a certain group of your employees actually travel to a certain destination, what is the budget they're allowed to book within? How do they actually face rental agreements? What do we do with invoicing, payments, so on and so forth? And we are trying to build actually a bridge between those kind of like disconnected companies. In terms of global coverage, we now have 45,000 apartments in a couple of hundred cities and 7 countries. We have, traction-wise, about 1 million booked nights. Average length of stay, 3.5 months, which is pretty interesting because when you compare short stay to long stay, players like Airbnb, for example, have 4 to 6 nights on average. So we have like 30 times longer terms of stay, which makes it completely different in terms of how corporates and business traveler book long-term apartments. Talking a little bit about the demand side, so how is our structure? You can mainly say that long-term travel can be divided into kind of like 2 separated business cases. One is called business travel, which is 1 to 6 months, which are usually consultants, trainees, project managers, freelancers, medical treatments, so on and so forth. And there's another portion of the market, which is relocation, which is plus 6 months, which are expatriates, new hires, and internship. One thing which is super interesting here, and we see that increasingly, especially in the tech industry, that the fast-growing tech companies do care a lot about the new hires they actually have. So within their perk program, they also offer 1 or 2 months furnished apartments for their employees when they're actually relocating to another city. So what's on our agenda? So first, we built the best product for long-term travel. So we want to ship features which makes it easier for corporate travelers, but also for suppliers in order to kind of like process long-term bookings. Secondly, we clearly focus on corporate customers. B2C is a different topic, but our DNA is really tailored to the problems, the challenges, and the needs of business travelers. Global expansion, I talked about that earlier a little bit. So today, our business travelers who search on Homelike search on 5,000 locations across the globe already, even though we are only covering seven countries yet. So there's a huge demand we can actually serve once we expand further. And the fourth one is, and that's a little bit outlooking, we actually spend a lot of time on building intelligent systems in order to use our data to provide suppliers and corporates a better understanding of what is the perfect monthly pricing, how they can increase the return on invest, how can they maximize on occupancy rate, but also from the corporate sales perspective, helping corporate clients to understand actually the benefits they may have when they accommodate their employees within furnished apartments. So next time you are sending somebody abroad and you're looking for a home away from home, think about Homelike. In terms of fundraising, maybe a couple of sentences. Here we just raised around 7 months ago with Spark Capital, so a travel perk, and Badi, who's coming next, we are sharing kind of like the same exciting investors. We will probably do a funding round end of this year, so when you're interested talking about that, I'm available here at NOAH. Thanks.
Maybe we're just going to do a quick interview because we've been talking about business now, but thank you. Maybe now we talk about you as a founder. What kind of a person are you? Where do you live? Let's start with where you live.
It's actually interesting. So the pic, you don't see it. So I do have kind of like 2 homes. So one home is Cologne, the other home is Barcelona, okay. And the rest of my time just like spending time where I need to be.
Why Barcelona?
I mean, again, referring to Travel Perk and Badi, so you guys get a lot of credits today. I mean, these are also Barcelona-based companies. It's a great city to live. People are very open. It's very digital there, very international.
More digital than Berlin?
I mean, I'm not born and raised in Berlin, so we built up the company in Cologne for a reason. I can't really say if Berlin is more digital, but the great thing about Barcelona is, for example, that I get the feeling that in our business at least, suppliers and corporates are a little bit more digital than the German folks, I would say. But it's just like also a beautiful city to live in, right?
And tell us about your founder life, like how many hours do you work? Have you ever been sick of your own business?
I mean, hours-wise, I think as a founder, when you're passionate about something, you kind of like process and work 24/7. I can't really tell you how many hours I do work, but what I've learned, especially after the last funding round we did with Spark Capital, $40 million US, things started actually to change, right? So when you start off a business, the first thing is you want to get traction and GMV, but now it's about what is the vision in the next 2 or 3 years for your organization, right? So what I needed to learn to step back sometimes and just like have time for yourself and think about, okay, how do you build this organization forward? What are things actually happening on a global scale, right? So I think I've got never sick of the business we are doing. Sometimes you get sick about how offline things can actually still be, even though we are already at a very digital level in our life. And this is sometimes frustrating. And you question yourself, why can the real estate industry or the business travel industry not moving fast on the digital side. But I think that's the reason why we are here, right? Trying to change it.
Exactly. Have you been talking to any of these guys whose industry you would want to change, to give them some advice?
Yeah, it's actually it's interesting. So maybe sharing some insights here. So when you go to the largest real estate fair, which is in Munich, called Expo Real, people are dressed up in suits, usually older men, white men actually. And in the first year when we participated in the conference, nobody wanted to talk to us. In the second year we had meetings. In the third year you made it to the upper level on top of the boosters, right? And this explains how long it actually takes to get into already established networks. And this is a supply side. On the business travel side, I think the younger companies, right? So Get Your Guide, for example, that just did like a 500 million round with SoftBank, so they work very closely with us, and they're super happy with that. And because they've understood that culture is really important and that they need to offer something for their employees, right? But some, let's call it very traditional corporates, with like longer than 100 years in the market, they probably haven't kind of like really understood what they can actually offer their employees. And you know, we have a war for talent out there, and you need to think about what can you offer, and we try actually to give them one perk they can offer to their employees. But it's enduring, and it's a longer term project. It's not that you throw 50 million in the market and then you will be number one. It's a lot of quality, being authentic, being honest, and trying to keep in discussion with these guys.
One advice, how do you do this as Homelike, as your company? How do you attract new talents?
There are various things. So first of all, I think you need to have great people in your management team. And our head of HR, she worked 6 years for Google. And I mean, Google is a culture-driven company, right? So it's a lot about, today morning, actually, I discussed with her, so we do offer 26 vacation days for the employees. And she said, actually, Dustin, how can we increase it to 30? But from a founder perspective, we say, okay, this is 4 more kind of like vacation days times 125 employees. But I think how we try to attract them is by sharing them a vision. So the word purpose actually became pretty dominant in our recruiting interviews. People actually said, Dustin, why are you doing that? And they don't want to hear the answer, I do that because I want to make my investors rich, right? That's not the reason why we're doing that. So we want to change something. So talking a little bit more about purpose is something where we found out that we can attract good talents. And one thing, being in Berlin today and being a founder of a company in Cologne, there have been a lot of discussions about, do you need to start your business in Berlin, or can you also build businesses somewhere else? And when it comes to great hires, they don't care about location, they care about the business and why you're actually doing that. And this is also something we said change.
Thank you very much for the quick interview. Thank you. Bye.